Hey everybody, welcome to Have You Seen It Lately? I'm your host Matt Sunner, along with my good friend Danny J. How you doing, brother? Doing
Hey,
good?
how everybody doing? Everybody, nice to see everybody out there. It's going to be a great day to talk about movies today.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We're back. We've had some scheduling issues and some technical difficulties, but we've gotten that all squared away. So we're going to come in here and jump into one of the greatest movies of all time, especially if you grew up in the 80s, Highlander.
Yes, this is such a great movie. It's an anomaly because it's something, but it's a cult classic. It's something that's super huge and spawned a lot of different projects, either animated and movie wise. And on top
And
of
comics.
that, and comics. I mean, it's just crazy
Comics.
because it exists in two different planes of existence in a sense. A lot of times on the show we talk about cult movies, and this definitely is one. But the Highlander series of movies and television programs, etc., that it spawned, it's like, where did this all come from? Meanwhile, it's still maintaining a cult classic, which is really, really neat as far as
it's almost like just below mainstream. It's reached that level where it's just kind of like, here's mainstream and here's Highlander. It's just kind of floating in there.
Everybody knows about it. Nobody
that little realm. Yeah, you mentioned Highlander, and people who haven't seen it at least now have a base of reference. Even if they haven't seen it, they kind of know the concept.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And I mean, it's just amazing that, how this movie even came together overall. I mean, you think this was Christopher Lambert.
Yes.
French. He's playing a Scottish person from the Scottish Highlands.
Yes.
It's just only his second English speaking role. His second.
And he speaks
his
English
first one
well.
was Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, where most of his grunting, making ape sound,
exactly.
and his broken English made sense because the man is in his, at that point, you figure like his 20s or 30s before he ever learns English. So it's like it makes sense that he's got a weird kind of accent, because he doesn't know English.
It's like in Highlander too. There's one scene where they actually make a point to point out his accent.
Yeah, the cop, right after he gets arrested, the guy's like, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "Lots of places."
You talk
funny. Where are you from? Lots of different places. Yeah. Which, I mean, thankfully, the whole concept of the story made that work. Yeah, because you figure the guy is now thousands of years old. As they move from place to place, they have to blend in. And then after a certain amount of time, they got to move on so that they're not drawing attention to themselves. So you figure over thousands of years, you would have picked up the dialects and the accents of the different places. So you are going to have a very non-distinct accent now.
Yes. And he kind of does.
And yeah, it is, because
I would not think him out to be French.
Nope. It's like it definitely doesn't sound Scottish anymore. It's just very kind of like, truly, as the cop says, where are you from? Because you sound funny. You can't pick it out. Funny. You can't. Yeah, you can't pick it out. It almost sounds like the guy is, creating a voice at that point.
In a sense, yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's talk about what Highlander is for those two.
For those of you who haven't seen it. It is about a group of immortals who can only be killed if you cut off their head.
Yes.
And they are battling for the prize. And none of them even know what it is.
No.
They just know that eventually, when it gets down to the last few immortals left on the planet, they will feel an inexplicable draw to a location. And that's where the final battles will take place,
because it's like a tournament almost.
Yes.
Yes. But there can only be one, and that's
there can be only one. There can be only one.
In the movie.
Can be only one.
And I want to talk about that in a little bit later too, because
it's amazing though. And it's very interesting, the dynamic that kind of plays out between these immortals. We don't see too many of the other immortals. We only get a few minutes of screen time with some of the other ones, other than the main characters.
Right.
But a lot of the immortals, they don't even know that they're immortal until they die their first death.
Yes.
So
now imagine that. Like you live a pretty safe life, and you die in like your 80s. Right?
Oh God, how bad would that suck?
And then you come back because you don't lose time. You come back just as you are. So now you're stuck being this 80-year-old man for eternity. You're like, what the fuck, you know?
Like, hang on, don't cut off my head. I gotta change my diaper.
Yeah. You see the guy's trying to cut off his own head. It's like,
oh, enough of this. I'm done.
You know.
But we first meet Connor MacLeod. He's going out with his clansmen to fight this other clan in the Highlands of Scotland.
Yes.
And with the other clan is this mysterious stranger who is only referred to as the Kurgan.
Yes.
And it's amazing because there's a lot of people who watch the movie who think his name is Kurgan, but it's not. He's the Kurgan. It's
the race of people.
Yeah, it refers to a race of people.
Yeah. I think he's nameless. He's nameless.
Yeah, it's like he takes up different aliases as he's gone through the years, and in this one, he's finally going by like Victor Kruger, which was very interesting, especially then you eventually have Freddy Krueger slicing people open.
Yeah,
but it's very cool because at one point he says to the Klansmen, which we don't understand how he knows Connor MacLeod's there until it was actually eventually explained in comics that through the years with one of the immortals that he eventually kills at one point in his life. The big thing we have to preface this by when you kill another immortal, for those people who haven't seen the movie, and again, we've talked about this in our first couple episodes, there are spoilers. You take what they call their quickening. So you take their knowledge, their power, any special abilities that they'd have, you gain that. So as you kill other immortals, you're continually getting stronger.
Right. So in other words, if I killed 3 people and then you kill me, now you got not only my power, but the 3 people that I killed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you're gaining their strength, their abilities, their knowledge. And apparently at some point or another, the Kurgan kills an immortal who has a certain level of psychic ability. So his psychic vision shows him at some point that Connor MacLeod will take his head.
Right.
So he decides he links up with this rival clan, and he tells the rival clan, don't anybody touch him. He's mine.
Right.
Because he wants to go out there. He just wants to incapacitate him and take his head before Connor MacLeod ever has a chance to become an immortal.
Right.
And I'm taking him out. I'm just going to get him before he can ever get me. And he meets him on the battlefield, runs him through the gut with his sword. And as he's there now on the ground with this giant sword wound through his gut, he raises his sword to cut his head off. And at that point, Connor's clansmen see it, and they tackle him and beat him to the ground, whatever, and carry Connor off.
Right.
And they spend that entire night figuring he's going to die. He's going to die. And one of his kinsmen, ironically enough, was played by a gentleman who would later go on to be in Braveheart. Yeah. And it's funny because at one point the one woman, I guess it's his sister, his cousin, whatever it is. Yeah, really. Is crying and he says to him, he's a Highlander. The last thing he needs to be hearing is the wails of a weeping woman or something, so pull it together, let him die an honorable death, let him go meet his maker. The next day he's up and around. The wound heals itself, and now the entire clan figures, instead of, here's the wonderful thing about the 1500 1600, well, she probably even before then, I can't remember what year that initially takes place, but instead of thinking, oh, it's a miracle, he's been saved by God or our God or whoever you pray to at that point. No, he's possessed by the devil.
He's the devil.
It's not, oh, it's a miracle. It's like, oh man, he must be possessed by the devil, by evil spirits, and he gets banished.
It shows actually too the state of people, that even someone who loved you the most will be the least loyal to you, based on their preconceived notions of religion and stuff like that. The woman that is wailing for him is the first one to cast that first stone and say, he's the devil, he's the devil.
Yeah.
Like, you were just crying for him.
Been possessed. He's been possessed. It's not, it's not, oh my God, he's been saved. It's a miracle.
And he'll look at him.
He's the devil.
He's up and running. He's like, hey.
We got to kill him. We have to kill him. The entire village is about to kill him. Yeah, the entire village is about to kill him. They've got him in stocks. They're about ready to stone him to death. And thankfully another kinsman says, hey, he's our kinsman. And we owe it to him. Hey, we'll just banish him.
Right.
So they banish him for the village. He's like,
right.
Yeah, something had to happen. So he's just like, look, as long as he's away from us, he can't hurt us. So don't ever show your face here again, or you'll be dead. He's like, can you walk? And he's like, I can sure as hell walk out of here.
Yeah.
And
I'll get out.
Yeah, just let me go. I'll make my way out.
He still feels pain. He doesn't want to get hit with rocks and stones and stuff. You know what I mean? So
so he eventually meets this woman, falls in love, and as they're kind of doing it, here comes Sean Connery playing a Spaniard.
Right now you get the Scottish guy.
Yeah,
which he's who they were.
Yeah, and again, he's kind of cool. I mean, and it was great the way I think it was very interesting concept how they did everything, because again, he had to move around. His backstory, he was actually originally an Egyptian. He was born in Egypt.
Yeah,
and eventually
he's an Egyptian who has a Scottish accent. He's an Egyptian that has a Scottish accent who's now portraying
with a Spanish name. Villalobos Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Juan Sanchez Villalobos Rodriguez. Ramirez.
Or the peacock, as our Highlander would call him.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's carrying a Japanese katana.
Because at some point,
because he spent time in Japan, and he got married, and his father-in-law made him this sword.
Yes.
And at one point, he's telling Connor McLeod, you got to leave your woman. You got to leave your woman. You can't marry. You're an immortal. He's trying to save him the heartache, because he's like, hey, when my wife, whose father-in-law made me this sword, I was devastated. I'm trying to save you that pain. And he's like, nah, forget it. But he starts teaching him how to fight. He teaches him he's an immortal, which is amazing, because you figure it's like, why would he just not take his head?
Right. And that's what I always wondered too. Like, why is he being so nice and so nice to him specifically? And the answer to that is it's just writing to get the movie going.
Yeah, and I think in the comics they have ended up writing it where they kind of whole outlined the Kurgan having these psychic abilities. Was at one point Ramirez and the Kurgan have fought once before, and I forget exactly. I was reading about it, and I forget how it is that they didn't end up killing one or the other, but something breaks up the fight and they retreat, and so but he learns then of McLeod.
Right.
And it's one of those things where eventually, as we see throughout the storyline, not only this movie but eventually the Highlander series, it's almost kind of like the people who would use the prize for good kind of like avoid each other as long as they possibly can to make sure they take out the immortals who they feel would use it for evil purposes.
What he's doing what Ramirez is trying to do. He's saying, listen, this guy cannot win the prize, period.
Exactly.
Talking about the Kurgan. He cannot win the prize. We cannot allow him to have that kind of power. So
the race of men would be plunged into darkness basically what he says at one point. It was something to that effect.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just, so they make their friends, and at one point too, even asked Ramirez, if the time comes, would you take my head? Which never gets answered. Yeah. But I mean, it was just the thing that made this movie great was not only the acting in it, I mean, which was pretty good. I mean, especially considering the overall concept. It's like, how do you do this without making it cheesy?
Right.
We initially it opens up. We don't even see his beginnings until after the first few minutes of the movie. It kind of jumps around between modern times and flashback,
and back and forth. And here's the funny thing about it, and this is what drew me into it as a young child. What year did this come out? This was
let me just double check it on IMDb.
84.
And again, I've mentioned this before that I need to take production notes on these. 1986. 1986.
86. So 86, which for those wrestling fans out there, that was a fine year for wrestling. That was the fine wine of wrestling years was 86.
Yes, it was.
And the movie starts out, and this is how I actually came across the movie. I didn't see it in the theaters or anything like that. On HBO, my dad happened to be watching, flipping around. He puts the movie on when it starts to come on. And the first opening act is a match from the AWA. It's the American Wrestling Association. It's the Fabulous Freebirds versus Greg Gagne and Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, who are the High Flyers. Being a wrestling fan,
Jumpin' Jim Brunzell.
Yeah, he was on my.
You had on that Way Cool wrestling show.
So it was really cool that I sit there and I'm like, I hear wrestling, and I'm like, what is this? And I kind of snuck out of my room and I looked in my dad's room and I'm watching these wrestlers because they show a little bit of the wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
at this point, Connor McLeod, he's there in the audience. It's supposedly Madison Square Garden. He's up in the audience.
Yeah. And which AWA never was at Madison Square Garden. Just to give you a little heads up. But yeah, I'm like, I know these wrestlers. That's Greg Gagne, and I know the Freebirds, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And so now I'm hooked, and I gotta watch this movie that has wrestling in it. I don't know what the hell it's about. I just know there's wrestling in it. So I go to watch it, and then you just get immediately you go into, like, after 3 minutes, you go into your first battle. So they suck you in right away.
Yeah.
And now you're like, well, what's happening here? I don't know, because you don't have a flashback yet.
Yeah. As all of a sudden he's now in the.
Yeah, you do. You have a flashback before the battle.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows the first flashback, and that's where you see him in battle.
Everything we just discussed. Everything we just. I don't drag everything out again.
So it shows that, and then it flashes back to modern day. And now there he is. It's like he keeps showing him like he's sensing something, and he's sensing this other immortal.
And the immortals all can sense each other when they're in a close proximity to each other.
Exactly. So that's how they kind of all find each other, and that's how they know. So once you've become an immortal, you've died your first death, you now can sense the other immortals when they're nearby.
It's like you smell.
Essentially, yeah. It's essentially almost kind of like it's like an ESP, extra, just a vibe you get.
And you get into, and I don't want to get into like major detail because we're trying to keep the show short, but like,
we're mainly about why we loved it.
Yeah, we go through there, and he falls in love with this this reporter. Or she works for the police. She's a crime scene analyst, and she finds she's like a CSI.
So I mean, they know the guy's head's been cut off. There's a sword near him. They arrest
the sword that he has. That's the sword that Ramirez gave to him, correct?
Yes, because he ultimately takes Ramirez's sword after Ramirez is killed by the Kurgan.
Right, and what happens? Ramirez on the sword, and you're explaining this to him. We go back to what you said earlier: is that when his father-in-law made him that sword, it was the only one of its existence.
Yeah,
the way it was created, the way it was folded over 200 times.
Something Japanese were making swords like that didn't start showing up until like a couple hundred or 1,000 years later.
Yeah, so like it's a way out of time. It's an anomaly. So that's what.
Yeah. So as they initially arrest Christopher Lambert, he's coming out because the cops when he kills the other immortal, the quickening sets off the sprinkler system.
Yes.
In the parking garage next to the police and fire responding.
A lot of electricity happening. You're seeing power siphoning from the dead person and going into Christopher Lambert, et cetera, et cetera. I want to speed it along because we can spend 3 hours talking about this.
Yeah, we could talk. But I mean, we know the general synopsis. So let's really kind of get into what the reason we're doing the show, why we loved it. What was good about it?
I explain this to anybody that I explain this to. This was an action love story.
Yes, it was.
It was an action love story because not only do you have your current love interest for the movie itself, but you go through his different love because in the flashbacks we see his first wife. Yeah. We see the first one turn on him, call him the devil, right? So he's like,
yeah.
And then he meets someone, and you watch in these flashbacks how she grows old, and he doesn't.
And he doesn't.
And
he doesn't. That's the thing too. They can't have children. They can't have children. And she's all apologizing on her deathbed. I'm sorry, I couldn't give you children. And how is it? I can't believe you look so young. And
right,
she never crazy.
She never figured he was a devil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You really feel for Connor because his first love, his first wife, loved him to the day was old, and she at one point when Ramirez and her are hanging out and he's out doing whatever he's doing, and that's when the Kurgan attacks and kills Ramirez, but he rapes the wife, and she never
tells him
at all.
Never tells him anything.
And he doesn't find that out until later in the film from the Kurgan.
Yeah.
But the you see his heartbreak because she's going to grow old, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And then there's director's cuts which actually explain a little bit more, which is really kind of nice to watch the director's cut.
Yes.
In modern times, he's a curator.
Yeah, he's an antiques dealer, and
he has an assistant.
His assistant, and that's the cool thing. That was the one thing I loved about the assistant, because they even talk about how his building has changed hands and all these people, whatever, and nobody's catching on. That's him. The only constant is basically his assistant, and it's because he met her as a small girl in France.
Yes, and during World War II.
And the Nazis are taking over her farm, attacking her farm, whatever, and a Nazi kills him, and the Nazi's about to go grab this girl, and he comes back to life, and the girl's surprised, and he tells her, it's real quiet, it's a kind of magic, and then stands up and kills this Nazi. So it's like now she knows the secret, and it's the only one he can trust because it's like, okay, I saved her life.
Yeah, she's not
through the years as his companion.
You get the assumption that their relationship evolves from a guardianship to a love to, because now she knows what he's like, they kind of get away from that. Like, she loves him. Yeah. But they're not in a relationship.
It's just like, this is my best friend, and I'm going to do whatever I can do to help him.
She almost goes from child guardian to love interest to mother son, because she wants what's best for him.
Exactly.
She wants what's best for him because she's growing old, but because she's growing older, because she knows you can just make an assumption and say this is not going to work out. I can't be with you, but I'm going to be by you because I owe you this loyalty. And
I just love how overall the movie does a great job of exploring that great little undertones right below the surface. We talk about how great it would be to live forever, but really, how great would it really be to live forever? Watching everybody you care about die. I mean, we got a great soundtrack from Queen. That is another thing.
Queen, and that's the thing. Queen did a phenomenal job with that. Queen is known for the Flash Gordon movie, and they're known for Highlander.
Yeah,
and synonymous with these movies, and with this movie especially, you have songs like "Who Wants to Live Forever."
Yep,
it's a haunting tune.
I mean, if you are a human being and have experienced loss, and you don't tear up when you hear that song, you're soulless.
And you know what? The soundtrack, it's not really a soundtrack. It's from an album called "A Kind of Magic," which is mentioned in the movie, which I actually had to import it from the UK. To get because it wasn't sold in the U.S.
I had it on cassette. I actually had it on cassette.
I had it on CD. I had it imported in from the UK, so I can get it. But the movie or the soundtrack, it just leads you in such a way. When you're in there and you're like, oh, this is such a heartbreaking song because he talks about who wants to live forever because you're talking
when love must die.
When love must die, and if you know Queen, I think, wrote that song. I think it's not long after Freddie Mercury found out that he had AIDS.
Yeah, because it was because you figure he finally passed in like 91, late 91, early.
He wrote it, I think, for himself. In a sense.
I think so. I mean, you actually see that, especially if you not to get away from the movie, but when you their recordings even after A Kind of Magic. There are a lot of songs, especially the one they did when he was actually dying, and an album that came out after he died with stuff that they had finished but hadn't released yet. There is a whole lot of exploring your mortality, in that music.
And so here's the thing. We're going to cut to the coup de grace here. They go through the thing and they fight and they do all this stuff. The quickening, or I should say the prize, primarily, I mean, yes, you get to get all the world's knowledge. And by what I mean by that is that you now have the ability to go in and you know everything. Period. You're a know-it-all.
Essentially,
You know what I mean, So
you're almost omniscient.
Yes,
at that point.
you could literally either be good and be able to bring about world peace. Or the destruction
and really change the planet for good, or plunge the world into darkness.
Right, which is what they were afraid of. But here's the main thing about the prize is that you get to grow old and have children.
You gain mortality and can actually enjoy life, knowing that all those moments become even more special because as the rest of us know, you only get so many of them.
Yes, it's fleeting.
You're able to live in that moment.
And I think that's the ultimate for any immortal is that, I don't want to be immortal. This is not a good gig. This is a curse.
It's not fun. It's not fun at all.
Now you go into what this spawned a number of different movies. Part 2 is, I think, even like removed from canon.
I think they went back and re-edited it and they removed stuff that originally like they were aliens or something. And it
turned out they were aliens from the planet Sykes. So that's why they were things. So somehow they come from space back to Earth, and Connor has grown old at this point and has brought about world peace. And now, because they're back, he becomes immortal again.
Because more of these aliens have shown up. Now the immortality spikes back in, because now there's not one anymore. Right. There can be only one, but apparently there can be only one
danger
on the planet.
So now they kind of removed that from canon in a sense, because it was a crappy movie. But it has Michael Ironsides, who's a great actor, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. Part 3 with Mario Van Peebles is what they kind of say is the true sequel to part 1. And that was pretty good. I saw that in the movies. That was pretty good. You get part 4, which is Endgame.
I can't remember the title of the fourth one.
I think it was Endgame.
Now.
I think it was Endgame.
It was something to that effect.
And that's where now.
Yeah, it was Endgame. It was Endgame, 2000.
Right? Yeah. So now this is where Connor McLeod. Is this where he meets Duncan McLeod?
Yes. So
what happens is
because Connor dies and Duncan takes over.
Right. So what happens is in between 3 and 4, the Highlander, the TV series, comes out, and that has Duncan McLeod, who is a cousin,
who also has a katana. That was the one thing. That was the one problem I had with the TV series.
What's going on?
It was like he has another katana. It's a dragon style handle on it.
Different. It's not the same one.
It's not the same exact one, but it's similar. So it's like they were trying to.
But they did make that he went to Japan as well. So they had to
they eventually brought that full circle. I think initially they wanted to give him that, so you had that initial connection to the movie, and then they eventually explained.
They had to explain
how he got his.
Yeah, that sword. You know what I mean? So Duncan is a cousin of Connor, and great series. That series was phenomenal.
Yes, it was. I mean, and especially considering it was like on USA, USA or TNT or TV. It was one of those networks.
It was 8 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
It was really, really good and explored and we got a lot of different Highlanders out of that.
Yeah.
And
we did.
Here's the thing, it kind of blows the movie out of the water because of the fact that he was down to being the only one, and now there's like fucking 30,000 of these Highlanders. These immortals are all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over the place again.
And you got to get everybody. It was and I think that was a Canadian made movie.
Yes,
so,
it was.
With much of the stuff at that time was being done in Canada because of the production costs are much less,
cheaper.
But a phenomenal show. And if you haven't seen Highlander the series, I suggest watching it.
Definitely check it out. Check it out.
It was an amazing show. It was up to date.
Yeah.
We do the same thing. He does his own like flashbacks,
but now, and they're funny too. That was the one thing that really made this series so good.
Yeah.
You know, it would show stuff like, you know, somebody challenges him to a duel. It turns around, shoots him. He falls down, and the guy's like, ha ha ha! And he gets up, and because he's drunk. He's drunk, and he's all like, really?
Mirrored in the movie, in Highlander the movie too. We see Connor. I'm sorry, I called your wife a bloated warthog. You know.
Yeah.
You know, which is funny. But now, the Highlander the series was like off the hook great. Yeah. So now, and they even spawned Raven, which was a spinoff of Highlander the series, and that only lasted like a few episodes.
Yeah,
canceled after one.
Unfortunately, not as well done as.
Yeah, it wasn't as well done, and the characters just weren't as good. And it's a chauvinistic scenario. I think nobody wanted to see a woman as a Highlander.
Which sucks because I think, you know, the character herself was a great character.
I just don't.
It was an awesome character.
At that time in the '90s, nobody really gave a shit about a woman lead.
Yeah,
I honestly,
unless you're talking about like Lara Croft, you know, with tits popping out everywhere.
Right, and that wasn't happening because the girl was kind of so the actress. But but now you get Highlander Endgame, which is the part 4, and this is going to be the passing of the torch from Connor to Duncan. So there's this, there's this bad guy. Once again, we have a bad guy who really can't win the prize, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Connor teaches Duncan this. And Connor actually was on the series once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah. They had him pop through a couple times.
Yeah, which was kind of cool. So you establish that connection that they're around the same time. And he teaches him this move, which if you get into this move, it's unbeatable. Like your victim is going to lose his head.
Yeah.
So, you know, he teaches them this move, blah, 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 and then they're fighting. Connor realizes that alone he could not defeat this bad guy. Okay? But he says, you know what? He says to himself, if Duncan and I are together, the answer, we will be able to. Yeah. So he sacrifices himself. He forces Duncan into a duel and says, this is for the better good. I need you to take my head. And Connor's come to grips. He said, I've lived long enough, you know, that type of thing. And Duncan takes Connor's head, you know, and now he has Connor's power, right? And then he goes on and wins the movie, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So now you think it's done. You're like, oh, what a great quadrilogy, or whatever you want to call that. I guess it's a quadrilogy. And you're like, what a great thing.
Saga.
And there was even a cartoon, an animated series, which you did not see the heads come off, but it was implied happening, and it's so obscure. I've never seen one episode, and it's hard to find too. There was also a Highlander video game for the Atari Lynx,
which not mmany people had.
No, at all. Not even
that was a very short-lived platform.
Yeah, not even the developers had it. It was that bad. But then you get it
was E.T. the game of consoles.
It was, and it went home. But then you finally get this thing where they're like, we want to close out the Highlander series. We want to close it out. And for a quote unquote made for TV movie, which was for Sci-Fi Channel, it follows Duncan MacLeod one last time as the Highlander. And it's in this post-apocalyptic world. You don't really know how far ahead in the future this is.
Yeah, they never explain it.
They never really explain it, but it's far enough that like shit's fucking going down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a nice future. You know what I mean?
No.
It's not a nice future at all. And they go through the thing, and this is when who was it? Paul Waters was now leading Queen at that point.
Roger Waters.
Roger Waters, yeah. And he does his rendition of Who Wants to Live Forever. Horrible, by the way.
Roger Waters is great, but it's that's like Roger Waters. That's what are you talking about? Roger Waters. That's goddamn. That's Pink Floyd. Paul Rogers.
Paul Rogers. That's a Paul Waters.
I can find. Yeah, you got me all screwed up.
Yeah. So,
Paul Rogers.
Paul Rogers. Great with Bad Company, bad with Queen. and he does his rendition of Who Wants to Live Forever in like a little like montage scene in this made-for-TV movie, and you're like, oh, really? It's like, you know, you're paying homage or whatever. And then it's like they have to further explain, like, how many can there only be ones can there be? All right? Because now we're fucking really just like blown this, like there was supposed to be one like 20 years ago, and then there was one 10 years ago, then there was one 5 years ago, and then there's going to be one again. And they explain it like this, and the way they explain it, I had to laugh. Because they just played on like words. When they said there can only be one, that didn't mean there can only be just one. There can only be just one. And what I mean by that is that I don't have to be by myself, but there can only be one. There's only one guy that can actually be this guy.
Yeah.
It's gonna be you. Okay. We can all be immortal. It don't matter. But there can only be one, and you're the one.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if we're dead or alive. So they could have saved everybody.
Exactly.
And they just went to fucking Duncan and said, all right, Duncan, you're going to do it. So really, in a sense, too, Duncan didn't even have to kill the bad guy in the movie if there only could be one. You know what I mean? Like, all right, so you're it.
You're it.
You're it. You know what I mean? That's it. And I said, and I looked at the TV when they explained that. I said, what? What did he just say? And I rewound it. And I said, did he just, what?
It's like, oh, come on. It's one of those things where, again, we got a great TV series out of it.
Yes.
And I think that's almost really what they should have done. I mean, the movie should have come out, and then you could have had a TV series, and it's kind of more or less just following along, and you could have liked it because it's more or less, you know, based on the movie. It's not, you know, it's based on characters created for this movie, and it gives us something to continue reliving our love for the original movie on a weekly basis.
And I will tell you this, the romantic side of this movie will appeal to women.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really honestly will.
Without slowing down the pacing of the movie. It doesn't get too mushy. It's just like, they, you know, based on her curiosity of him, and a couple times, like, she's kind of trying to follow him and learn about this story, because going like, hey, man, things don't add up, you know, and the fact that the Kurgan attacks him while they're walking around, while she's trying to get information out of him, she's kind of, you know, he starts relaying stuff to her, and, you know, it happens really, the movie happens over a span of maybe, what, like 2-3 days?
Yes.
When it really comes down to it, the timeline's like 2-3 days tops. The first one, the original Highlander.
The first one, it's about a week.
Happens over about, let's spend like like a week.
I don't know, because there's a lot of lovemaking that happens in that week. I don't think that lady was a whore like that, so it might have been a month. Yeah, maybe a month.
Yeah,
more maybe like a month to make it realistic, but
it's just one of those things where, you know, again, the movie was great because overall the pacing, the concept, they did it well. They did it very well. The soundtrack was great. And the thing is, too, the what really attests to how great the movie was, when Queen came in to do music, they were only going to be doing like 1 or 2 songs. Then they saw the, you know, the finished product, and they were inspired by the movie to write more music. They're like going, oh, we can give you more than this.
You get Who Wants to Live Forever. You get Princes of the Universe.
You get, Give Me the Prize.
Give Me the Prize.
Which actually, Freddie Mercury, surprisingly, really didn't like. Brian May wrote that, and it kind of comes out as stuff that was brought up in the recent Queen movie.
Yeah.
The band operated as a bit of a democracy, and everybody kind of got a little bit of input. And even if a certain person in the band wasn't really on board, it was like, okay, well, you're getting your cut. And the producer or director didn't really like Give Me the Prize because it had more of like a metal feel to it.
It did.
But you know, they did it, and it was a great song. And it was a great song. And it was just great movie, great lines. And I think what also made it great was when you start reading some of the information on IMDb, everybody kind of stayed in character.
Yes.
Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert, they stayed in character a lot. And until Sean Connery, I think he did his stuff in it was like a week. He only did like all his filming within like a week.
That's all I do.
And apparently too, Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown, who is, I think, such an underrated actor. Period.
He was the
He
Kurgan.
shows up in so many great things.
The Kurgan and what's the name on SpongeBob?
Yeah. And he was in he had Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs. He had a bit part in Buckaroo Banzai. There was a TV series like After Earth or something like that.
The original Bad Boys movie, which wasn't with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. He was in Bad Boys, which was a film about a guy that was in, and we'll touch that on another episode of Bad Boys. That was a movie. But the bottom line is, watch this movie. Watch it. There's small parts that that bother me. The big thing is at one point they show the Kurgan putting his sword together. Yeah, and it's like anybody knows anything about swords or any kind of bladed weapon, you can't make a multi-piece sword. I mean, maybe the blade and the tang. Maybe you could add on the handguard and the pommel and the hilt and everything else. Yeah, putting the blade together like it's
like two pieces. He shows them like sliding one piece onto the other, and it's like, first off, if you hit anything with it, it's going to shatter. If that end of the blade doesn't just fly off, the first time you're swing it. So I mean, there's some minor things.
Release it if it locks in place, exactly.
Yeah, it's like unless they showed some sort of a pin going through, there's something to give me something. But overall, a great movie. And again, as far as staying in character, apparently the production crew, they were scared of Clancy Brown because he was staying in character so much.
And he was a scary guy, dude.
Yeah, they were like he's become the Kurgan. They were afraid of him around set. They were like, I think this guy actually snapped. He might actually believe he's this guy.
Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button down below.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure hit the subscribe button.
Share this to everybody. Share it on. There's a Facebook page called Have You Seen It Lately?
Have you seen it lately? We're on Facebook. Like the page. Yeah. We'll post stuff up there. Obviously, stuff that we're watching, stuff that we plan on talking about in upcoming episodes.
And we want to hear from you too. So if there's any movies you want to talk about, hey, give us a shout. Throw it on there. Comment on the video here if you like. But check it out.
Movies you want to see. Movies you want to see us talk about. Hey, if you've got suggestions for the show in general, how we can make it more enjoyable for you, let us know, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to entertain you. We're going to have fun no matter what, but we could have this kind of fun just doing a video chat with each other and not share it with anybody. We want you guys to enjoy the show.
We want to share it with you. We do.
We want to share it with you.
Great show. It was a great show.
It was a great show, but we gotta wrap this up because we just got done wrapping up 3 episodes of DJs After Dark, so we are running really low on time, so we need to get to our families. But check that out as well, DJs After Dark. Great big show. Me, Danny J, Rob Cannon. We're running late. We got to wrap this up. Don't have time to, unfortunately, plug all the shows, but subscribe to the DJB Productions Network here on YouTube. Sign up for notifications. Anytime we add shows, new content for the existing shows, you'll know about it. Yes. We hope you watch it. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Dan, thanks for joining me again.
Yes, and thank you for having me. And remember, guys, silence your phones.
Silence your phones. We're on our phones enough during this show.
Turn the show
but again, if you think of a great movie from your childhood, you love it, ask yourself, have you seen it lately? Stream it, pull it off your DVD rack. If you don't have it, order the damn thing, will you?
Yes.
So until next time, I'm Matt Sunner for Danny J and the entire DJB Productions crew. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Have a great day.